Welcome to the Morecambe Bay podcast with Nigel Thompson.
Morecambe's illuminations once rivaled Blackpool's, and after a gap a couple of years ago, they came back in a new style. Baylight, held at February half-term, is a free light and arts trail with a community parade as well. And last year, 28,000 visitors were attracted. Could this year be even more popular? Dan Fox is among those artists involved. His work is known nationally. I met him in his workshop and sound studio across the bay at home in Ulverston to talk about his career and what events like Baylight mean to him.
We're in my little production studio, which is sort of used to be a glass blowing, had a kiln in it that was for glass blowing when I first got the place. So I've created a room within a room. So we're in a soundproof space. It's not very big. It's like, I don't know, 4.5 meters by 4, something like that. But it's got acoustic paneling, and then it's got my production kit, so my computer for recording and monitors, and then various instruments around the place, a drum kit and a piano and lots of percussion, and then a trombone. So this is where I sort of compose and produce music.
What a difference I'm sure it's made to your career. Have you before you came here, were you trying to sort of find barns somewhere really quiet to record, or was it really hard to try and find somewhere that would work for you?
Yeah, it's often the way I would be working in, I started off working in my bedroom when I was 14 on a cassette 4-track, and so I'm basically self-taught with all of this stuff. But yeah, having a space where you can play things, so I could play the tuba in here at 3 a.m. and not bother anybody, but also I can record very quiet sounds and not have sounds of traffic or other noises coming in. So I can sort of, for example, I did one project with recording lots of different cymbals and recording the entire decay of a cymbal, which can last a couple of minutes. So you really need a quiet space to be able to do that.
Got a cymbal just to your right. Go on, I've got to ask. Just a little play.
This is I've got a drum kit last year. I mean, I've played percussion for years, but I've always wanted to have a drum kit. What I really want to do is actually produce some dub. I love dub reggae, and I've just wanted to sort of get into making some of that. So I've got a kit. My son's actually learned to play the drums at the moment as well. So we've got this. Yeah, it's just kind of Yamaha kit. And got some nice cymbals off a drummer who's sort of retired now in Barrow, called Mike Kidson. He had some really good bits of kit that I bought from him, so I got some nice hi-hats from him. And my snare drum was actually given to me by a friend who found it in a barn, so it was a proper barn find. It was a bit rusty, but it's an old English snare drum which I've cleaned up now. So yeah, I used to do a lot of community music, so I started a project called Boomdang, which is a drumming project, and made all the drums for that. And that was passing on stuff that I'd learned from when I was quite young. I started leading percussion workshops when I was about 14 for sort of street bands and processional music, and I did a lot of community music stuff. And when the Sage Gateshead venue in Gateshead opened up, they set up a whole outreach program. So we were like the furthest west you could get, and in the early days of youth music, when then that all started going, and I really enjoyed doing that all for a while. But it was also very you give out a lot of energy and a lot of and I was finding at a certain point I wasn't enjoying it as much, and you can't do that kind of work if you're not enjoying it. You have to. Now if I do a workshop, I do really enjoy it because I don't do it all the time, but when I was doing it every day, I was just finding it a bit exhausting. So I don't do as much community music now. It's more sort of my own music projects.
I've been seeing you on the beach, around the bay actually, on the boom bike, which is just behind us here. That was fantastic. And I guess that's another form of kind of outreach, isn't it? Because people they're attracted to music anyway. What's going on, ears prick up, don't they? And I guess that's the kind of the way you do it now, isn't it? Is just get people interested, come along to an event, and then find their own way.
Yeah, exactly. The boom bikes came around because I actually saw a commission for Blackpool for Ride the Lights, which is where they close Blackpool Prom, and about 10,000 cyclists cycle down it, and it's a preview of the illuminations. And they had ideas for something for Ride the Light. So I thought, well, a sound system on a bike would be good fun. So I worked with some young people in Blackpool one summer to make this sound system. It started getting more gigs, so I made another one, and last year actually got a commission from Light Lancaster to make the fourth one, which is called a Duke Bike, which is based on the old Wurlitzer jukeboxes, and so it's got kind of loads of pixel map lighting that responds to audio, and that's going to be at Baylight actually next week.
Well, it's nice because you obviously you mentioned about sort of working in sound and the field, which I know you do as well. You soundscapes, and you're just showing you microphones, which are just above and beyond. You can record up things that a human ear can barely hear. But when it comes to light and light installations, when did you get involved in that, or was that a parallel kind of interest that you had at the same time?
That it was two things really. I started working on illuminated trails, I think back in about 2008. A friend of mine asked me to get involved making some soundscapes for a trail in Kielder Forest, and I kind of started working in that environment more then. And then when COVID happened and I lost a year's worth of work overnight because there was just no live events or no gigs going at all, one of the things that was still continuing were illuminated trails, because they could be delivered outdoors, socially distanced and quite safe. And so I thought, well, it would be quite good to try and make a light piece, which also, I mean, all my light pieces all have sound with them as well, because that's a sort of an equal thing for me. But I put in a couple of proposals to a couple of companies that organise trails, and I got a commission to make a piece for that, and it's kind of snowballed a little bit from then. There's been a big growth in both illuminated trails, where you go and install something for like a month, and then people go around sort of every night, and also short light festivals. So there's a whole network called Light Up in the North, where there's festivals in Lancaster, Blackpool, Leeds, Wigan, all over the place. And so if you can produce work that's of a certain scale and is tourable, then that's what we do now. We've just put a lot of energy into making the stuff very robust and weatherproof and can cope with the British winter. For me, it's great because it combines the whole soundscape making with something that's more visual.
It's funny you mentioned Morecambe, because of course we're heading there, I think, in a few weeks' time for Baylight. First of all, what do you think about the event? As somebody who lives quite local to Morecambe, when you heard about it, what were your impressions?
I think it's fantastic. I've been to, there've been two so far, and I've taken my kids to both of them just to go and have a family night out. Loved it. I thought it's a really good location for a light festival, because it's dark. You've got a nice dark background. It's really clear what the route is. You just go to one end of the prom and walk to the other, or vice versa. You don't really need a map to go and find your way. And it just felt really social. It sort of felt like an old perambulation of families going out, and I thought I just really liked that. Seeing other pieces of work there and thinking about the pieces that I've made, and think, oh, this could go there, or this could go there. And obviously there's different ways of rigging and installing things, because it's on the prom, it's hard standing. Often things go on, some pieces go on grass, some go on hard standing or on like tarmac. What's great this year is that all my pieces are at one end of the promenade, so it's down by Morecambe Town Hall. I've got a piece called Glittering Grove, which is basically like half mirror balls on a boom pole above your head. Then the boom poles look like old Victorian lampposts. They're sort of green with gold turned finials on the top, so they look nice in the daytime, and they've got little pin spots that uplight them, and then it creates sort of thousands of moving points of light along the ground, and they're spread out sort of 20 metres apart, so it makes like a 100-metre long trail, and there's sound on each of those poles. Because the railings there are so good, I can just strap all of these to the railings. I don't need to put any posts in the ground or in the sand or anything like that. And then I've got a piece called Aeolian Flutes, which are large bamboo, sort of 10-15 centimetre diameter bamboos with slots cut in the nodes around them, so when the wind blows across them, it's like blowing across a bottle. And then we've got a piece called Luminosi trees, which are 6 metre high. They look a cross between a sort of a jellyfish and a crazy toadstool parasol, like a sort of Christmas palm tree with thousands of points of light. And there's a soundscape with those, which is based on the Fibonacci sequence of numbers. So it's sort of reflecting growth in plants. So it's a sort of spiring outwards. It never actually repeats, this piece of music, played on Balinese gongs. And then the sound from that, we've got a system where the sound activates the lights so patterns of colour and movement move up and around the trees in response to the audio.
And was the music, was a composition, was that made in this very studio?
It was, yeah. I made it in here. It's sequenced. I use Ableton Live and Logic Pro. They're my sort of two bits of software that I use, but I made that in Ableton, a mixture of some sampled gongs, but I also was working at Leeds University a few years ago and happened to be in a room that had a big Balinese gamelan set in it, and at lunchtime there was nobody there, and I had my recording device, so I craftily sampled all the gongs that were in there. And then so some of the big gongs are recordings from there, and other ones are sort of samples that are downloaded.
So are you always kind of listening out for stuff? I mean, we've spoken before, whether we're kind of cursed or blessed with ears that kind of hear, oh, that sounds interesting. I mean, for me at the moment, it's birds. I've really got into oyster catchers. I'm trying to get a perfect recording of an oyster catcher. I haven't got there yet because the wind's always disrupting it. But your ears are kind of, or you're thinking of something that might be just useful for something in the future.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I is it a hobby or is it part of my job? What I like doing is just going out into the environment and capturing noises. So a couple of weeks ago, when it was really icy and everything was frozen up, I went up to a local tarn which had about a couple of inches of ice on the top of it, and made a hole in it and lowered a hydrophone and underwater microphone into it, and then basically lobbed bits of wood and ice and snowballs and things onto it. When I brought them back into the studio, they sound fantastic. They will no doubt be some source material for future compositions. Like, does an idea just drop in out of the blue, or is it kind of inspired by something? And I think for me it's a bit of both, but I think quite a lot of it is a process. So for example, with these trees, I back in, I think it was 2013, I got a commission to make some Aeolian instruments for a tour with Oxford Contemporary Music, where we went all around Britain, England, with 7 other artists, and we all made pieces that made noises just using the power of the wind. And so I made Aeolian harps essentially, and I needed something to, basically like a sky hook, something to get some strings high up in the air to catch the wind. And then I found these ex-military pneumatic telescopic masts which the MOD was selling off, so I bought a couple of those and started experimenting with them, and then I've used them for loads of things since then. So the core of that is this telescopic mast. I worked on a project with a Phil Supple, a friend who's a lighting designer in Scotland, Rook and Glen. We did a light installation in a park, and one year he did a whole piece with Moroccan lanterns, so like about 200 meters long through the woods, and I made a soundscape for it. And then the following year he wanted to do something similar, and I thought, well, could we make something where the light fixture is also a speaker? And so I came up with this idea of attaching what are called tactile transducers, so it's essentially a speaker to a cymbal. So you play audio through the cymbal, and the cymbal becomes a speaker, but it has the resonance of the cymbal as well. Right. So we made a system also with LEDs that uplit the cymbal so that they look really kind of beautiful and golden. And these were overhead. I think it was 150 meters long, and used a kilometer of speaker cable to do it. And it was really a good installation, but it took us like 5 or 6 days to install it. It was a lot. It was a lot of work. And I had all the cymbals afterwards, and I thought, how could I make this easier? So I used the same mast, but added branches to the top of it, and so it could hang 12 cymbals. So it was like a cymbal tree, and that worked really well. But that was very susceptible to the wind. Decided to change the cymbals for sort of big globe light fixtures, sort of 400mm diameter spheres, which spill the wind. That meant that the sound had to come off that and be through normal speakers. So it's kind of like a development process, and then commissioned, got lots of LED, learnt a bit about LED lighting and controlling that, and then developed these trees.
And when it comes to sort of looking forward to this year, is there anything kind of that you're really excited about that you're trying for the first time? Or
what's nice is being able to put up more than one piece together. So you it's the whole one end of this trail is all sound intervention pieces, so that it'll kind of leads people in. So that and increasingly, because we've created other pieces of work, it's bringing all of those together, which is quite interesting and for me also, I mean, not at Baylight but at Sizer, is kind of curating that work as well, and working with other artists and pieces that you think will work in a complementary way. And so I'm not actually creating any brand new pieces for this, although we've got the jukebox bike is only going to be going out for the second time at that, so it's going to be on the parade on Saturday night. A Wurlitz, a jukebox on a bike basically. We're working with the swing dance local swing dance group to process with us as well.
So it sounds like, as you're talking now, you've got obviously a big year lined up, lots coming up, you're kind of busy. You still enjoy it?
I love it. Yeah. No, it's, I mean, I've only ever had a proper job for a few months when I was like 20, working for a local authority as a community musician. It's always, it's never easy because nothing ever is the same. I have nothing regular, although I've got Sizer again this year, which is the first time I've had a regular event. So there's lots of people that I work with regularly, but you never quite know when it's going to happen. So this time of the year, it's always that kind of starting the ball rolling again and getting in touch with people and setting up gigs and events, and a mixture of knocking on people's doors and some people coming back and sort of saying, hey, we're doing this, do you fancy come and getting involved with something? Yeah, so it's always new, and every event's different, and creating new content for things. I think I've put a lot of energy in the last few years into creating new pieces of work, and what feels right at the moment is just to try and get those pieces out and working.
I guess for yourself, for going to Baylight this year as well, I mean, in previous years you went as a member of the public, this year you're performing, but when you see people actually looking and admiring what you're doing, is that what gives you the kick, the buzz, seeing people enjoy what you've created? I
think, I love that, and I think that's, as an artist, that's really important to see how the public respond to the work, because that's ultimately how you learn from it, and how you think about developing it or changing it. If you can have all the ideas in the world in your head and you think it's going to be like this, but then if people respond to it in a different way, then that you have to learn from that. And I love being there with the work. Apart from the illuminated trails where something's there for a few weeks and you can't be there every night, I really like I'm always there to put it up and take it down. I don't like have a team of people doing that for me. That's I'm part of that. So I love kind of seeing how people respond to it.
Dan Fox of Sound Intervention. Hear more from Dan in an earlier episode of the Morecambe podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Baylight, search Baylight Morecambe and we'll maybe see you there. Thanks for downloading this edition of the podcast. Have you heard the one about the Bay's wild swimmers?
Some people go in to dip, and just, some people do it for the health benefits, don't they?
Enjoy this and around 150 more. Leave a review, subscribe for free, and tell your friends to check out the podcast that's all about the Bay.